Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and talk about none other than the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus and compare it to kind of like its predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. Now both these phones are obviously from the S lineup, but it's very strange because Samsung did something a little bit different this year. So first of all, pricing wise, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus costs $1,000 right now. The S10 Plus you can pick up in a lot of places for less than half that cost. So if that's something that sounds a lot greater to you, I will leave both these phones linked down below. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, I think a very important thing to keep in mind is that at the time, the S10 Plus was like the greatest that Samsung had in the S lineup, but now that's kind of for the S20 Ultra or the S21 Ultra. So that's a kind of a big thing to keep in mind, but otherwise, looking on the front, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus had a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It was a 1440p panel, and at that time, even now, it's still a very, very good panel. Like, this is a beautiful panel for sure. It's hard to believe that Samsung or any manufacturer can keep one-upping their displays from the previous generation, including this one. This was a beautiful panel for sure. You had that dual camera setup on the front of the phone too, which looked kind of weird, I'm not gonna lie, but they otherwise changed it from then. You had the fingerprint sensor in the display, and overall a curved panel too. That's another big thing. But overall, you had a really, really good looking phone on the front of the Galaxy S10 Plus. Or in the S21 Plus, you had the 6.7-inch 1080p panel. So a little bit of a difference right there. We went from a 1440p panel to a 1080p panel. Not really a huge fan of that. I don't think anybody really liked that. You had the fingerprint sensor in the display still, center hole punch display. So that's kind of like the difference. But I don't know. I'm not really a fan of that. I don't really think anybody liked that lower resolution display. But a huge thing to keep in mind, and we have to keep reiterating this, resolutions aren't really everything. A humongous advantage that the S21 Plus over the S20, over the S10 Plus, or even, other phones is the fact that it has that 120 Hz refresh rate. And that in and of itself, I would take a 720p panel with 120 Hz refresh rate over a 1440p panel, to be honest. Sometimes that 120 Hz refresh rate is a really cool capability. Now, they could have easily done both. They could have kept 1440p and done 120 Hz, but again, there's nothing we can do about it. So that right there is pretty much the biggest differences on the front. USB Type-C on the bottoms of both, headphone jack on the S10 Plus as well, but a micro SD card slot on the S10 Plus as well. And these are some major changes. When you look at the body of both these, you're going to notice these type of things, and it definitely is kind of annoying when you have the S10 Plus that has like more I/O and just more functionality overall than the Galaxy S21 Plus. On the back, you have a frosted glass back on the S21 Plus, but the standard glass back on the S10 Plus. In my opinion, I kind of like the frosted glass back the S21 Plus has going for it. So that in and of itself is another pretty big advantage that phone has over a lot of the competition, as I stated before. So when it comes down to that aspect, for sure the S21 Plus, I guess it feels like the better phone. It feels like the better phone overall. But functionality wise, there's still a couple functionalities that the S10 Plus has and some features the S10 Plus has, such as the headphone jack micro SD card slot that the S21 Plus doesn't have. Now, both of them have reverse wireless charging and everything like that on the back, which is great, but we do have that camera setups on the back of both these phones as well that'll pretty much go ahead and hit on right now. The Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus had that 12 megapixel wide angle lens, 12 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 16 megapixel ultra wide sensor, where the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, on the other hand, had that 12 megapixel wide angle lens, 64 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Now, when it comes down to the camera quality, starting off with the S10 Plus first, what I can tell you is that phone still has a really, really good camera setup for the most part. There's not a lot of phones that I stated back in the day, even now, that still hold up so well in the camera standpoint. You can do 4K 60 on the back, and you can do 4K 60 on the front too, which is really awesome. So when it comes down to this overall camera setup, I can definitely tell you the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus's camera is for sure an amazing asset. It looks good, it feels good, it still performs extremely well. If anything, I still think it's perfectly fine. There's not really a huge difference factor between the S10 Plus and the S21 Plus. I think camera quality, photos, all that stuff is going to be better on the S21 Plus, but I think the S10 Plus still has a really, really good camera setup for sure. But on the S21 Plus though, like I stated, the cameras are going to look overall better. You're going to be having more functionality. You're going to be having better camera setups. But the best thing about the S21 Plus camera, and maybe the biggest advantage you have on that phone, is the 8K capability that you can film in. Now, it's not really a necessity. It's not something that you have to use, and it's not really something that a lot of people are going to to be using anytime soon, but it's the fact that you have that capability in and of itself is something that's really, really awesome. You know, when you have that capability starting off, you are already future-proofing yourself like a crazy amount. So that's a pretty big thing to keep in mind. So when it comes down to both of these, I'll probably tell you the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus's camera is better than any other camera right now for the most part. It's the best camera you can pick up, but the S10 Plus's camera is still really good for the most part. On the front, 4K at 60 on both as well, so there's really not a crazy big difference between these two front cameras besides you having an additional wide-angle lens on the S10 Plus, which is kind of funny. But I'll definitely tell you when it comes down to both of these, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus for sure has a better camera. Now moving on to, I think, like I stated before, the biggest difference between both of these phones, when you look at both these phones, you're probably going to notice this specific thing more than you're going to notice anything else, and it's actually a software difference in kind of battery life as well, but specifically software. So first of all, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus was actually decided to have another version of software. It's going to get an extra year of software support, which that is amazing. I love seeing that. But that also means all the other Galaxy S series devices after this are also going to be getting an extra year of software support. So the S21 Plus is going to be outlasting the S10 Plus by quite a bit. So if you get the S10 Plus now, I think every other functionality of this device is perfect except for the software. Whatever Samsung is going to do for the next couple versions of software, the S10 Plus isn't really going to experience it. You know, it's going to experience Android 12, but it's not going to experience anything after that, which is very sad. I feel like the S10 Plus could easily support it. The hardware is there, but the software isn't going to be there. So that in and of itself, I think, as stated before, is the biggest differentiating factor between the Galaxy S10 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus. If you were to go and upgrade from the S10 Plus to the S21 Plus for one reason and one reason only, it'd probably be because of the software. You're going to be getting a much longer lasting phone from the S21 Plus. You're still going to be getting software support for the S10 Plus right now, as well as security updates, but at the when you look at it long term, the S21 Plus is going to outlast almost all the other devices from Samsung for sure this time around. So even other phones in the market, when you look at maybe even like the Galaxy A series, the Galaxy Fold, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus is going to outlast pretty much all those devices. So the battery life too, 4100 mAh battery on the S10 Plus, 4800 mAh battery on the S21 Plus. I think the battery life is overall going to be better on the S21 Plus. The battery's degraded a little bit on the S10 Plus, as well as that, high resolution display. More pixels to push is going to equal more, less battery life. So ultimately your battery life is probably going to be better on the S21 Plus for sure. So in terms of that, that's probably the biggest differentiating factor from the S21 Plus to the S10 Plus for sure. Now moving on to the performance segment, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, when it first came out, had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset with 8 gigs of RAM on the base model and then 12 gigs of RAM on the top tier model, where the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset with only one model with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So technically you actually went, down 4 gigs of RAM if you go and get the top tier models of both these phones. Now what I'll tell you is first, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus is still a really, really good performing phone for the most part. No matter what you're going to do with it, theoretically, it's going to be perfectly fine. I have not gotten the One UI 3 update yet on my specific model, but on other versions of software that I ran on this thing, it was a really good experience. I really didn't have too much to complain about, and I think that's exactly fine. My only complaints are with the software. One UI isn't my favorite software, as most of you know, but the performance of this phone is still top tier. Like, it still feels like a very fast phone. Apps open up, games perform fine. There's really not that much to complain about. It's a very fast phone. If anything, maybe it's a little bit slower compared to my S10 Plus sometimes, or my S21 Plus. That's the only time it feels a little slower. When I compare it to the newest devices, those are the times where you're like, wow, I wish this phone was faster. Other than that, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus is still a really, really fast phone for pretty much everything you're going to throw at it. But for those of you who want to take it to the next level, let's say you want to take it to something that, can experience, that you want to experience the next level of performance, I think then that's when you would go for the Galaxy S21 Plus with that, newer Snapdragon chipset. With all that innovation within the middle of these 2 years, I'll definitely tell you there's been some improvements, but even when I compared my S10 to my S21, I just didn't really see like a crazy big difference in the speed performance. Like, yeah, there was a difference, but I don't know, like I still feel like a lot of that difference came from the 120Hz refresh rate, because between my S20 and S21, not that much craziness if I'm being honest. So I think with the Galaxy S21 Plus, you're going to be experiencing the same thing, just a smoother phone because of that 120Hz refresh rate, and possibly possibly a faster phone as well, but it's not going to be something like you can't live without it. Like if you have an S10 Plus, that's going to be more than enough for a lot of you to, just use the performance daily for sure. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. Now to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you go and pick up a Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, or should you go and pick up a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus? Now this is what I'll tell you. Let me start off with some pros for the S10 Plus. First of all, beautiful display on this phone. It's been a little bit older, so it's gone down in value a little bit, which is really, really good to see. USB Type-C, Samsung DeX, reverse wireless charging, headphone jack, micro SD card slot, beautiful back, beautiful feeling phone. This phone's camera is still really, really good on the front and back. The front cameras on this thing are really good as well. The display is beautiful, fingerprint sensor. There's really not that much to hate on. Like if Samsung were to release this phone in this day and age, as long as it had 120 Hz, I don't think anybody would care. I think people would still think the S10 Plus is an amazing phone for sure. And it doesn't really flop in too many areas. The software is a mutual thing that both these phones flop in. However, the biggest advantage that I said before that the S21 Plus is going to have beyond the 120 Hz refresh rate and probably even the better cameras is the fact that it's going to get longer lasting support from Samsung. Next year, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus is probably going to get its net last update, which is very sad to me because the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus's hardware is still more than capable of supporting the next 10 versions of Android properly, but Samsung's just going to cut it. The S21 Plus is going to last you much longer, and like I said before, that's the biggest difference between these two. You're going to be getting a much longer lasting phone from the S21 Plus than the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, but you're still keeping your expandable storage on the S10 Plus. You're getting a high resolution display, really great cameras, reverse wireless charging. I just don't think I would upgrade from an S10 Plus to an S21 Plus. If anything, I would go from like a Galaxy S10 Plus to a Galaxy S20 Plus, or better yet, to a Galaxy S20 Ultra. If you like those big phones, I would honestly probably recommend going that route rather than going to the S21 Plus, because in some ways it's actually a downgrade. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. Like I stated, I'll leave some of these phones linked down below. You guys can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave those in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.